Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. We're about to start in about 2 minutes. This is the course Communicative Language Teaching. So we're gonna start in about 2 minutes. Okay, thank you for being here. So just be patient. Good afternoon, everyone. It's 12:30 sharp. So it's time to start our webinar or workshop. Thank you for being here. My name is Abdel Jacobo. I'm the academic specialist for the University of Dayton Publishing in SM Ediciones in Mexico. We are very happy to have you. We understand that these are difficult moments, but we want to give you some light at the end of the tunnel and taking these difficult moments for training and help you on your professional development. So it is an honor to present today our speaker, Ana Caballero. I'm going to read her bio. She sent us in Spanish. I'm going to read in Spanish. Ana Caballero es originaria del estado de Sinaloa. Es licenciada en diseño gráfico con más de 10 años dedicados a la docencia del inglés. Está certificada por medio de Cambridge University con ISELT, In Service Certificate for English Language Teaching, en Delta módulos 1 y 2, which is Diploma in English Language Teaching for Adults. Y Train the Trainer, certificado exclusivo para capacitar profesores inglés como lengua extranjera en contextos tantos de educación pública como privada. Ha colaborado con distintas instituciones educativas y organismos certificadores como asesora académicas, entre ellos International House como directora de estudios y Center Exams Manager de Cambridge University. Capacitó profesores de español como lengua extranjera en colaboración con International House e Instituto Cervantes y ha estado en proyectos de investigación sobre la enseñanza del inglés con un enfoque sociocultural adaptado a distintos contextos en el país. Durante los últimos años, Ana Caballero ha formado parte del equipo de University of Dayton Publishing, UDP, en proyecto de Fly High, creado para la mejora continua del área de inglés en instituciones educativas. Ha diseñado cursos de preparación para certificaciones de Cambridge para profesores de inglés, tanto en aprendizaje de Young Learners, educación básica, CLIL, Content Language Integrated Learning, y From Planning to Assessment, los cuales han sido impartidos a profesores de distintos estados en México, como Aguascalientes, Baja California, Chihuahua, Durango, Sonora, Nuevo León, Oaxaca y Jalisco, entre otros. Ana Caballero tiene experiencia editorial como editora de contenido y autora en los proyectos para la Secretaría de Educación Pública en México y en editoriales como Cambridge University Press. y Montenegro, además de tener autoría en materiales propios académicos para la DGTI. Thank you, Anna, for being here today with us. So feel welcome to start your presentation, and the best luck. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. Man, that was long. when I wrote it down, I didn't think of how long would it be, just to say it. Well, welcome everyone. Well, Abdel already said my name and a few of the things I do. And well, first of all, I would like to tell you that this is a very, very interesting topic to me. And I would like to share all the info I've learned throughout these years. But before we even start with this, I would like to know where you're from and if you're a director or a coordinator, or if you teach primary, secondary, kindergarten, to have an idea of who's listening to me today. Could you type it down in the chat?
Okay, Anna, we are waiting for responses. So as soon as we get them, I'm going to publish them. So let's just be patient. And I'm going to read the messages because for some reason we can't see it in the chat, on the chat box. But Maria Paz says she's a school teacher. We have Anonimo, is middle and high school teacher. We have Antonio Romano from Cuernavaca, Morelos. Then we have Giovanni Morgan from Ciudad Campeche and Ciudad del Carmen. Alejandra Villegas from Ecuador, English teacher. We have Josue Barrios from Guadalajara, Mexico.
Peru. Oh, wow. People
We
from
have
Peru.
Arthur. Arthur is a teacher in elementary school in Guadalajara, Jalisco. Alma, she's a kindergarten teacher. We have Evelyn from Peru. Juan Pablo San Roman Trujillo is a teacher on an elementary school in Guadalajara, and he teaches first and third grade. And we have Yesenia from Chile, and the last one, Valeria, she's an elementary school teacher.
Wow. So we're all teachers from Latin America. Yay. Well, thank you for sharing where you teach. And now we're going to start with this. When you think about communicative language teaching, what words come to your mind? I'm going to ask you to write down all the words you can think of when we say communicative language teaching. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do that. Okay, and I'm going to write some of the comments you write here. This is going to be like my whiteboard. Can you type a few words? When we say communicative language teaching, what can you think of?
Once again, Anna, I'm going to have you reading the messages because the chat, it's kind of private. Oh. Arthur says that he thinks on expression. We have Agustina, meaningful learning. We have an anonymous using online classes are effective for little ones. We have another idea, context. We have also an idea about communication. Anonymous says is a nice option to work. Learning from experience, real language context, speaking activities, debates, communication, understanding, speaking, teamwork. Agustina says meaningful learning, conversational pronunciation.
Okay, very good. So you have an idea of what this means. Okay, well, before we jump into these topics, we're going to talk about how did we get to this point? How are we now in 2020? Yeah, it's been a long year and it's only March. Um, how did we get to this point? We're going to talk a bit about history because in order to understand what communicative language teaching is, we need to go way back. And I know that some of you were here yesterday, and the workshop talked. I mean, the trainer talked a bit about history, but I need to go deeper now because can you see my screen? Can you see my PDF? This is a timeline I created for us to understand how we went from learning Latin and Greek to learning different languages, going through different periods of time. Okay, so when we go to grammar translation, I know you've heard about this. I know that most of us learned with this method. We're talking about, well, that this started about 500 years ago when Latin was the only language we could learn to communicate in order to understand and have access to education, commerce, religion, government. But later on in the 16th century, due to political changes in Europe, we had to change to the main languages to be French, Italian, and English. If we look at this, we see that it says just reading and writing, no exposure to real language. What does this mean? People were sitting in the classroom, they were just staring at the teacher will give a set of grammatical rules. The class will be taught in the native speaker's language. So you could imagine just saying, yo is I, and the traditional way. I know you're very, very familiar with this. Then, well, this means pretty much to know everything about something rather than the thing itself. We knew the rules, we knew the vocabulary, but we didn't know how to use it. Then there was this reform movement, which was pretty much like a revolution, because people said, okay, no, I think this is not what we need language for. We need language to communicate. So in this reform movement that I like to call more like a revolution of the language, we are talking about the creation of the IPA, International Phonetic Alphabet. We're talking about different approaches, the study of spoken language itself. Yes, I know. Well, if you can see the screen is incomplete because I'm zooming on the parts that we need. Is that okay? Because if you do it like this, you won't be able to zoom in. So I'm doing this for you. So here we are in the reform movement. Students were having more phonetic training in order to establish good pronunciation habits. There were conversational texts or dialogues, but this was like just a revolution. This didn't have an order. Then we came to the serious method, which was pretty much an observation of steps. Can you see the mouse? Can you see where I'm pointing to? Okay, well, pretty much this was based on how children use the language. Again, well, this is for the first time when we see items in context, activities related to things that were in the reach of the students. For example, the serious method was more like, okay, I walk, if I wanted to teach the verb walk, it was I walk to the door, I opened the door, everything was about the door, because this was pretty much the idea of how language will be learned, you know, just with things that were around them. Okay, then we came to the total opposite of the grammar translation. This is why this period of time is so important, because we went from reading and writing to the total opposite. This was completely no first language, just listening, speaking, and communication. And I'm doing this because it was not communication itself. It was just a series of steps of repetition, and this is a bit of TPR. I saw that some of you teach kindergarten, so you know what TPR is. I'm going towards that in a moment. Then Mr. Skinner and Pavlov decided that, wait, sorry about this. We're talking about psychology here, behaviorism, and this went together with the audiolingualism, which was the Army method. When we talk about the Army method, we're talking about war. We're talking about the 1950s, 60s. Well, let me tell you that in 1943, there were 55 American universities that would use this method to help train spies to take from the United States to other countries. People will need to learn French, Italian, Chinese, and Japanese. And how did this work? It was pretty much like the dog and Pavlov. I mean, there was a subject, it was very, very mechanical, and it consisted in different types of drills. The teacher will record a sentence or will record a dialogue, and it was pretty much like, hello, my name is blah, blah, blah. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too. So you can imagine that they would do this with a classroom full of students. Let's talk about 60, 70 students in a classroom, just repeating until they get the pronunciation right. Why was pronunciation so important? Well, we're talking about war. If you didn't get it right, you will get raped and killed. As simple as that. Then, in 1960 something, I mean, now I'm going to talk about some of the events that overlap over history. We talk about, there's a guy, Chomsky, he's pretty famous, and he developed this theory that is called universal grammar. What happens here? He says that if we can learn a language, I mean, our first language, we can easily learn another language by constructive analysis. We are taking some of the things back, some ideas from the past, as you see here on the door. There was like a translation community. There was a few use of L1, and as always, and I still believe this, less is more. The less we explain, the more learners will learn. Then we're moving towards 1972 with the community language learning. This was a weird method. I wrote say humanist, in which learners will just sit around in a circle, and the teacher will walk around them to ask them what they wanted to learn. And no one will speak until the learner or one of the learners will want to speak. I mean, if you want to read more about this, these are very interesting topics because some of the strategies we use nowadays are taken from each one of these methods or approaches. Then we go to the craziest method, in my opinion, Suggestopedia. Have you ever heard about Suggestopedia? Can you type yes if you've heard about Suggestopedia? Hello? Okay. New. So no one has heard about Suggestopedia. Good, because we're not using that in our classroom. When we talk about Suggestopedia, we are talking about people sitting in circles, singing songs, translating some poems, and becoming actors. This is a very, well, this was very big in Europe. However, it was not as big here in Latin America because you need special equipment to do this, and teachers need to become actors. Okay, new messages. No, you haven't heard about this. Yes. Okay, JC Beltran, you have heard about Suggestopedia. Well, Suggestopedia was pretty much the idea of having students. Well, this was more for adult learners who would have different ideas or past experiences of language learning. So they will play some music until they were relaxed, and then they will have them repeat or act or have different personalities. For example, in my case, well, maybe Sarah Galvan would be a waitress in New York, and that was her role. And Dinora was a famous singer in a cabaret in France. So taking different personas, they will definitely get comfortable and confident speaking another language. It sounds kind of weird, doesn't it? But it does. I mean, I'm not saying there's a bad method. I'm just saying that we can take bits of methods that can help us become better teachers. Then we have Gateño, the silent way. This method was initially used as, well, as a method to teach math because they would use a set of like sticks, like color sticks, and they will say, okay, this is a noun, this is an adjective, we're going to put them together, etc. So this is pretty much what we do when we explain grammar and we use colors. Then for elementary, well, for kindergarten teachers, we have TPR. Mr. Asher, an American psychologist, he takes some ideas from the series method that goes all the way here and says, okay, well, if students follow instructions, we're going to take these ideas to have students follow instructions and learn the language. What did this mean at the end? Well, it was pretty limited because it was pretty much like imperatives, like, okay, sit down, stand up, raise your hand, or cut the yellow triangle, or color da-da-da-da. So it was pretty limited because it wouldn't let students understand, well, I can't comment why. Yeah, similar to a role play. Good. I mean, I'm going to continue and we're going to have questions at the end, okay? But I can read some of your messages. Then in 1983, Mr. Krashen, who has heard about Mr. Krashen? Krashen? No? No Krashen? Well, Stephen Krashen, he is still alive, and he developed this 5 hypotheses, and I do agree with him, and most of them, well, all of them. I'm going to go over them pretty quickly because we're almost reaching the point of the communicative language teaching. Okay, so the first of the hypothesis was input plus 1, and I think this This is something you do every day. I mean, you give a little bit of challenge to your students. If your students' level is here, you don't talk to them until here. I mean, you just slightly move towards more difficulty in the language. And students go like this, because what happens if you start giving instructions that are super complex? Well, students get frustrated. And then they start, teacher, I don't understand. Teacher, I can't do this. Teacher, I was not born in the States. Why are you talking to me like this? This is so fast. Does it sound familiar? Then he talked about acquisition versus learning. These are different things. Language acquisition is what we acquire when we are, well, I'm going to take this off. Learning a language involves a series of rules. If we go back to grammar translation again, we need a series of rules, yes, but we also need to acquire language. For example, there are simple things learners acquire without us having to teach them. Does it make sense? You know, like when you say good morning, good afternoon, open your books, you're not explaining that open is a book. Oh, can you see it? Okay. Okay. So input plus one, it is different to acquire a language than learning a language. And I'm going to give you an example. I was recently in another country and I didn't have any formal instruction. And I had to acquire Italian because I needed it to survive. Does it make sense? I mean, sometimes we say, yes, as long as we get the message across, we're communicating and we're learning the language. But no, in this case, we are acquiring the language. I mean, maybe it's not accurate, and we're going to talk about accuracy and fluency in a moment, but acquisition, it's different to learning. Learning happens in the classroom, and that's why you're here, and that's why we are here. Then we talk about the affective filter. I'm going to ask you a question. Have you had students with a bad attitude in your class? No? So all of you have students with good attitude in your classrooms all the time. They're always in a good mood. They're always willing to learn. Wow. You're super lucky. Oh, wait. Russian thought about input is very important. Yes, it is. Yes, the input plus one is very important, and we have to be careful with what we say and what we teach. Anónimo. Yeah, crash into this expert. Yes. It's not that acquiring is better than learning. Learning is a process, but it goes hand by hand, hand to hand. It's more like, okay, they go together, because when we talk about grammar translation, it was only learning without using it. And then acquire is all the other things that are around learning. What happens in the classroom when students are trying to use the language, experimenting with it. Exactly. Acquisition is also natural, and it can happen. It happens in the classroom as well. I have kids and they want to learn and say, okay, yes, I have Juan Pablo San Roman Trujillo. You're right. This happens, and I'm going to go over this in a moment. All the time I work with teenagers, input plus one, P, yes. Exactly. Acquisition is more like something that happens without you noticing it's happening. And learning is having a set of rules, and as I said before, it happens in the classroom. Then when we have the monitor hypothesis, it's when it's like, I call it like when we have our Pepe Grillo. Did you ever see Pinocchio? Um, we always had this, well, he always had someone who was telling him, okay, this is correct, this is not correct. So what happens here is that as we grow older and as we, I have students with attitudes, so yes. Well, this is, oh, sorry, yes, I'm going back to the affective filter. What happens when a student is stressed or something's going on in his or her house, or they don't like English? There is like a barrier they build and they don't want to learn English, but I'm going to go over that in a few minutes. Working with books made them hate English. I feel you, Arthur, but don't worry. We have a solution for everything. And yes, acquiring language is more natural. This is what happens when you're learning your first language. Your first language is more acquired than learned. Even though in primary school you have some formal instruction of the language, you're not walking around saying, ah, este es pluscuamperfecto. So I'm going to think of a sentence with using pluscuamperfecto, right? And the same should happen with the second language. Now, when we talk about the monitor, is how we monitor ourselves when we are learning a new language. Have you had these students that they're trying to talk and suddenly they stop and they are rethinking what to say, or they correct themselves, saying, oh, I go to the supermarket yesterday. No, every day. This is pretty much the monitor working, because we all have our own monitor, and as more rules we learn, the monitor becomes bigger. You don't understand input plus one. Okay, let's say that you're talking, Ali. Let's say that you have input is what you give to your students, and input is what they receive. You know, we're talking about languages, input and output. Output is what they produce. Input is what they receive. So if we want to teach something, anything, in terms of language, we cannot use a very complex language to teach primary students. Am I making myself clear? For example, you cannot, if you say, let's write an essay about good person. What about the affective filter? What do you do? What do you think about using toys? Okay, let me write this down. Using toys in the classroom. Okay, remember, I don't know how many people are here, but we're going to try to cover everything in this presentation. Okay, so input plus one, we want to make it a little more difficult, but not this difficult, because if you teach learners the same level, at the same level they currently understand, they get frustrated. They're in their comfort zone. I'm from Chile, and you will see here, people, okay, this is very important. Maria Paz from Chile, she says that people are really scared of English language. Maria Paz, I'm going to copy and paste your comment here to see if we have time at the end of this webinar to go over your topic, okay? Anonymous says, oh, well, my students are eager to learn. Well, congratulations, Anonymous. And then not all students are eager to learn. I know, I was one of them. I have one of the worst English teachers ever. And later on, I had different English teachers, and I decided to become a good one. But going back, the affective filter, it also depends on the type of activities we plan for our lessons. But we're going to go over that later on. Now, if we talk about the natural order, it's as simple as we don't learn the same way. Well, we don't learn the first language and a second language the same way, because the first words you learn when you're a baby are, let's say, mama, papa, agua, things you need to survive. And on the other hand, if we talk about the second language, we are learning, hello, what's your name? How are you? Does it make sense? Because we're not teaching adults or even kids in primary school, mom, dad, and all sort of words that they need to survive. Then we got here to a natural approach. So I'm going to make this timeline smaller so you can see everything that takes and all the ideas that we have now. Going back to the ideas of using toys in the classroom, I think it depends on the context. If we're talking about young learners or very young learners, of course they work. If we're talking about TPR activities, they do work. Because when we're in our classroom and we tell students, open your notebook, we show them the notebook and we tell them to use a pen, we are using TPR. And we're also TPR took ideas from the serious method. So they're all related somehow. So now if we talk about communicative language teaching, okay, get ready to show because there's a tendency to bully. Yes, bullying is another completely different story. What do you suggest to work with the natural order? It's not that I'm not telling you to work with the natural order. It's just the ideas Christian had. And depending on the type of students you have, for example, if you have very, very young learners, they will definitely need that language to survive. Not mom, dad, but at least can I go to the toilet? Can I write? Or yes. I'm going to go over the comments at the end because we're never finished. Okay, is that okay with you guys? So when the communicative language teaching approach started, there was a big discussion between task-based learning and communicative activities. So we are nowadays talking about the post-method era. And to do this, we have to review some of the frameworks. Yesterday's trainer talked about PPP. Remember, he mentioned presentation, practice, and production. Then we have TBL, which is task-based learning. Do you know how does task-based learning work? Anyone? Task-based learning. Yes. Can somebody give a quick example of how this works? My kids love playing the whiteboard. Okay, they make alphabet soup. That's a very interesting idea, but I'm talking about task-based learning. What is the main idea of this approach, or this framework? Okay, Sara Galvan, I was proposing the distinction between acquisition and language. Because here in Spain, acquisition of the second language is the ideal. Yes. In other countries, I mean, in Europe, most learners, well, in many countries, students learn acquiring both languages because you're too close to each other. And since they're younger, they get in contact and they get the exposure to different languages. For example, most people in Germany speak English or Polish. I mean, but that is different. It works, Sarah, that works differently here in Latin America because, well, the only countries, I mean, most of the countries' first language is Spanish, and we have different dialects, and then we have English in the two northern countries, but that's pretty much it. Not all children get exposure. Okay, well, okay, let's go back to TBL. Well, yes, make students work, thank you, Ecuador. Make students work on meaningful projects and tasks. You give them a task and discover, perfect. Cynthia, I think, Cynthia and Ecuador, you're completely right. You make students work on meaningful projects and tasks, and you give them a task so they discover the language themselves. It is when you give them a sort of challenge and they have to figure it out. Yes, it is pretty similar to that, but it's not just a challenge is a very big word. We're talking about a language task. Yes, PPP, presentation, practice, and production, and based on a project. I mean, we're talking about different small tasks. For example, based on a project. Yes, when we talk about a project, we're talking about a big project. What about if we give them small tasks? Because you cannot work in a project, well, according to my experience, you cannot work on a larger project in a 40-minute lesson. So let's talk about tasks, small tasks. For example, in this class, our task is going to be planning a trip to South America. And what are you going to do in your trip? What are your plans? Where are you going to take? Blah, blah, blah. And at the end, students figure out that they're learning going to. Does it make sense? TTT, teacher talking time. No. Well, it also means teacher talking time. But in terms of frameworks, have you ever heard about TTT? No? Okay, let's see. TBL uses the tasks as a means to learn, yes. But now we're on TTT, Francisco. Thank you for participating. Okay, TTT. Test, teach, test. Test, teach, test. Okay. For example, this is a very, very time-saving framework. You teach you test students to see how much they know. For example, you give them a questionnaire about things they have done or things they haven't done. Okay, I'm going to write down here in the chat. Test, teach, test. There you go. You test students first. So you give them like a little example, a little test or exam. Then you realize you see their weaknesses and you see what they know and what they don't know. You teach. It's pretty much like a presentation, like a small presentation, and then you test again. You use a different test to see if students learned what you just taught. This is a very, very simple way of explaining it. Is it clear? Yes? Should I continue? Okay. It is important to know the difference between a task and an activity. In a task, there's communicative. Yes. Yes, we're going to talk about accuracy and fluency in a moment, Juan Acosta. So we're going to go over tasks and activities. Is natural order related to brain development? Yes, because it's when we acquire language. And how do you test, Karina? Well, it's pretty simple. You can test students by asking, well, by giving them a little exam or giving them a questionnaire so they can use in class to interview themselves. For example, our friend yesterday, he gave an example of find someone who. As you monitor, you can, okay, it's another activity or another task. I'm going to use them in the, like if they were the same thing, because right now we're not focusing on difference between one and the other. But if we talk about the type of test, it could be just another activity. For example, if I start my class with, let's say, a questionnaire, this is a controlled practice. It can be that controlled practice, or it can be written. It can be TTT again. Okay, I'm going to summarize this, giving you an example. I start my class telling students, okay, we're going to work together. Well, we're going to work in pairs, and you're going to ask each other questions. I already have a small piece of paper, well, a handout, in which they have to ask each other questions about things they did in last Christmas, okay? And they have to write the comments down. They have to write their partners or their classmates' answers. I walk around the classroom and I listen to what they say. I write some errors down, and I take the most common errors for my teaching part. Then I present. This is the teaching part. Okay, this is simple. This is past simple, and this is how it works. What did you do last Christmas? Well, I went to blah, 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 pronoun, well, subject plus, verb plus, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's the teaching part. And at the end, we have another test. For example, I give them a controlled activity with just fill in the gaps, or I could just give them another interview. What did you do last summer? It's a variation. It's the same task that I gave them at the beginning, but with a different focus. Does it make sense? I'm testing again to see if they understood my presentation or my teaching part. Does it make sense? Nancy? And yes, Juan, you can start your lesson with an activity as controlled practice. Yes. And how to test? Is it only written? No, it can be spoken. It can be when we are teaching listening. You can also test some listening skills, and you can also test for reading skills. But we're not going to go over that because it would take us more than 5 hours. Nancy, is that okay? Okay. So now, the big debate, accuracy or fluency? Yesterday, we heard about accuracy and fluency, and now the big debate. What is more important, accuracy or fluency? Right now, 1 minute. Type your comment. If you think accuracy is more important or fluency is more important. Depends. Good. Yes, all the time. Yes, it depends. More answers, please. Accuracy or fluency? So, accuracy. Accuracy. Okay. More fluency. Fluency. So we have 2 against 2. It depends on the focus of the activity. But what is more important in real life? What is more important for students to learn, to be able to be accurate or fluent? Both are important, but accuracy is maybe more important. Fluency, accuracy. Well, when we teach a class, when we're planning a class, yes, it depends on the objective of the objectivity. Fluency, accuracy. Well, I wish we could do some polls here so we could see what, well, it depends on the object, but well, who is on the side of fluency and who's on the side of accuracy, but I can see that we're pretty much even, right? And some of you say, well, it depends on the focus of the activity. Well, first of all, we have to define both of them. I'm going to ask you to write a few words, with just 1 or 2 words, and comment, what does accuracy mean to you? Depending on the goal, initially fluency, then accuracy. Interesting. Accuracy. Some words that you could tell me, please? Accuracy helps to get the meaning across. Okay, Francisco. What else? I'm going to write them here so you can see if we have pretty much the same ideas. When you start talking, I mean, like a student, I think fluency. Well, for me, the point to be competent is to be fluent. Wait, that's fluency, right, Sarah? We're talking about accuracy right now. But I'm going to write your comment here. What else? They're both definitely important. No, correct. Oh, okay, very good. Correct spelling and grammar. Okay, so pretty much when we talk about, well, fluency, when we talk about, yes, fluency comes with practice, but we have a lot of people who speak with a nice speech rate, but with real Americans in real scenarios, it doesn't matter. They won't understand making, okay. Well, when we talk about fluency, we are giving the learners to, okay, well, we're going to start with accuracy first. Okay, well, accuracy gives attention to form. Yesterday, we talked about MPF, meaning, pronunciation, and form. When we present new language, well, when we present new words, when we present new tenses or new grammatical structures, we need to have this very clear, meaning, pronunciation, and form. What are we using it for? But here, in accuracy, we're giving more importance to form, because this is the control of language systems. This is how students know or get confident if they feel that they're able to say it right or say it correctly. They feel more confident because they are they're getting involved with the nuts and bolts of language. This is pretty much it. They know that they know. We have to pay close attention from it requires close attention from the teacher and explicit correction. That's why I was very pleased to see that many of you wrote that it depended on the focus of the activity. What do we want our students to achieve? Accuracy or fluency? Can we have both in our classroom? Of course we can, we should, and we must. Practice activities for accuracy should pay attention to form, should help students with familiarity of the grammatical structure. It requires thinking time because it's not something that happens like this. We are not Harry Potter. Students need their time to process information, and they're all different. Someone earlier mentioned multiple intelligences, and yes, I mean, all students are different, all groups are different, even cultures are different. So it's not the same thing to teach a class here in Mexico than to teach a class in Italy or in Germany or even in Peru. I mean, all students have different cultures. And of course, when we talk about feedback, it's a feedback that we give learners. Of course, it has to be very positive. Always like, okay, you did this right, but you can improve by doing this. And we have to be very patient because most students are not aware of the importance of accuracy, or some of them are over accurate. And if we go back to crashing, we have to consider the monitor that is correcting them as they talk. Exactly, anónimo. A student who is more fluent than accurate can be more successful as communication than someone who is more accurate than fluent. Yes and no, anónimo, because it depends on the context. If we talk about students who are just traveling or just want to buy something in English, in this case, well, yes, they are. If they're fluent and they have the confidence, what happens is that they can get the message across. But what about if we're talking about in a medical situation? If you're fluent but you're not accurate, you can have a lot of problems. Trust me, I know. Now, if we go to fluency, well, I didn't ask you to write in the chat, but someone said the point to be communicatively competent is to be fluent, understanding and being understood. I liked it. It is, as you see here, it is the ability to process language speedily and easily. And when we talk about process language, we're talking about understanding and producing. This is when learners atomize knowledge, and there are different ways to do it. We're giving the learners the chance to use their own linguistic resources to real communication. It allows learners to express their own meanings with minimal intervention from the teacher. So practice activities should pay attention to meaning, be authentic, and have a communicative purpose. And if we talk about what is more important, fluency or accuracy, I would definitely say that it's not like one thing or the other. It's a continuum. If you teach accuracy activities first and you take them to master the grammatical structure, sooner or later you will have a fluency outcome because your students will get more confident when speaking language. And when we go from fluency to accuracy, which is what happens when we follow a TBL framework, what happens is that students start noticing their errors and then they become accurate. So it's not like one thing or the other. They need to go together, and you, the teacher, you're the one who decides where to start and where to finish. And also, well, we have to follow a program, and it depends on the goals of the school and the type of group you've got, etc. Does it make sense? Now I'm going to show you an activity, and you're going to tell me that I'm covering this so you can't see the other part, so you can't see the answer. Can you read activity, well, activity 1 and say if the focus is accuracy or fluency, please? The activity says complete the sentences to make them true about yourself. Number 1, in 10 years. Number 2, in a couple of months. And 3, in 2 weeks. What is the focus of this activity? Accuracy or fluency? Yep. Okay, accuracy. Yay, Karina Chicoma in Ecuador. Not sure, maybe fluency? Well, we'll see. This is a controlled activity. This requires language accuracy and it focuses on form. In 10 years, I will blah, 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 blah. In a couple of months, I will. Sometimes we get confused because we say, yes, students are using their own personal knowledge. However, we're focusing on, yes, on accuracy because we're giving students the prompt so they practice the modal verb will. So all of you who answered accuracy, you're correct. So congratulations. I'm going to accuracy. Yes, Rosa Dinora. So hey, yes, accuracy. Then we have another activity. Are you ready? Come on. Activity number 2. Write an email to a travel agency asking them about deals. Find out the most visited destinations and different means of transport and prices. Accuracy or fluency? Come on, give it a go. Accuracy, accuracy. This is for activity 2, right? Giovanni and Anonimo. Accuracy, less controlled practice. Let's see. I'm going to wait for 5 more people to answer so I can give you the answer. Fluency, Dinora. Fluency, fluency. Okay. Let's see. Are you ready? Yes. It's a less controlled practice. It's a freer practice. It's using language accuracy that we're giving them a communicative task, which is different. And we're getting real world communication as a result. So this is what happens when we have a balance between our activities. It is not that all of our activities are going to be fluency or accuracy. We can have a middle ground. And now activity number 3. Okay. Write an email to a friend asking her to come and visit you for holidays. Accuracy or fluency? Fluency, fluency. Accuracy? Interesting. 2 more answers and then I'll go to show you the accuracy, I think. Write an email to a friend asking her to come and visit you for holidays. whoever said fluency, you're correct. Am I saying you're going to use certain verbs? Am I giving them restriction of language? Am I giving them talk about your plans in the holidays? Talk about the good the things your city has to offer. I'm not telling students to follow any grammatical rules. I'm not giving them any hints to follow a certain pattern. So it's a free activity and it's focused on fluency. So whoever wrote fluency, you're correct. Okay, now another big debate, and I'm going to go over this very quickly. What is more important, grammar or skills development? Well, grammar and skills, or systems and skills, are important. And what are the skills students should develop to be able to communicate in English? Well, I'm going to give you a hint. One of the skills learners need to learn is speaking. What are the other 3 skills learners need to learn? Huh? Okay. Let's take a look at language as this. Okay. We have language is divided in systems and skills. In language, when we talk about systems, we talk about everything that can be put down, skills development, they go hand by hand exactly. Writing, exactly. Thank you, Josue Barrios. Writing, listening, perfect. So in systems, we're talking about grammar, vocabulary, phonology, or phonics, how you call it, and discourse. And this is in a different color because if we talk about discourse, we could talk about this for hours. And we all teach grammar, we all teach vocabulary, and we all teach phonology. And when we talk about skills, we talk about 2 different types, receptive and productive. And then again, they go hand by hand. We have the receptive skills, which are reading and listening, yay, as you said, and productive skills, speaking and writing. So they are not apart. We need the systems to support the skills and the other way around. Because when we teach reading, sometimes we need to pre-teach some of the words, some of the difficult words, so students understand. This could be more important than grammar. Exactly. Well, grammar is not a sub skill; it's more like part of a system. But yes, you have you have the idea correct, Rigoberto. But it's not like one thing is more important than another. They go together. They go together all the time. Because what happens is that if you don't know the correct grammar, you may not get the right message across. Or if you don't know the correct vocabulary, people will not understand you. Or if you're writing a text, but you don't know the stylistic features of a text, well, you may be seen informal or an uneducated person. And we are educating students for the future. We're not only educating students to pass from 1st grade to 2nd grade, we are thinking about the bigger picture. And if we think about the big picture, we're thinking about our learners as global citizens, as people who will travel, who will try to get a job, who will try to pass or to get a good IELTS band, develop language skills. Exactly. But in order to learn, in order to develop skills, we need to have these tools. So let's see our systems as the basics of, of the base of the skills development. Some problems or situations, well, maybe later we can, not later today, but we can have a whole workshop about skills development and systems and how they relate to each other. But right now, talking about communicative language teaching, some situations or problems we may encounter, and I would like you to confirm, like we do it on Facebook, like confirm if you have lived this. My students don't want to learn English. Some of you already wrote something about that. Can you confirm this? My students don't want to learn English. Can you confirm? Some of you mentioned that if you teach teenagers, they are not very interested in learning English. Yes, Sarah. What can we do to solve this? What can we do to, well, what can we do to help students become engaged with the language or to be willing to learn? I know that you always hear like, oh, okay, let's make our classes meaningful and let's make them communicative and let's prepare different activities. Let's use videos in the classroom. Let's personalize activities. But yes, that sounds very good. This sounds very nice. But in the classroom, we have to get out of our comfort zone. I've seen over 100 schools in the country, public and private schools, and based on my experience, well, we have the best intentions as teachers, but when we try to do something new, something different, students, some of them don't feel encouraged to learn. Oh, Juan Pablo San Roman. I'm going to tell you a personal story, and it's going to take me 2 minutes because we have 20 minutes to finish. When I started teaching, I was working in a private school, and I had this student who was diagnosed with TDA, attention deficit disorder, and most of their teachers in primary school, well, all of them told him that he will never learn English because of his condition. So they will give him a broom to sweep the floor. So you can imagine 6 years listening to all their English teachers saying, you can't learn English. First year of secondary, he was my student. And when I walked into the classroom with my book and the list, he got up and took a broom and started sweeping the floor. And I said, what are you doing? And he said, well, all my teachers in primary school told me I will never learn English because I am diagnosed with a TDA. Sorry. But I can't, I know I can't because I'm dumb. It broke my heart. And I think that it breaks your heart every time you listen to one of these stories. What I did back then, I didn't have any training whatsoever, and I started teaching. I followed my instinct. I started talking. I started using differentiated instruction without even knowing about it. I started giving him different tasks. I discovered that he was a very creative student, and I realized that the more tasks that involved his creativity I made him do, the more interested he will become with the language. So it's more about knowing our learners and finding out why they are reluctant to learn English and how we can help them using their strengths. Does it make sense? Then I had another group, an entire group, imagine this, of 25 girls who hated the class because they hated the book. This was not a UDP book. This was another editorials, but it happens. It happens. I think this has happened to all of us. Whenever they see the book, They start saying, ah, la clase de inglés otra vez. And they look at you and you look at them and you want to tell them, please, I'm here, I need you to pay attention, and you're desperate. But what we can do is first change your attitude. Every time I walked into that classroom for the first 3 months was a complete nightmare. And every time before I got in, I will read in, read out, and will start my class with a great smile and invite students to learn something new. I mean, this was the secondary class, so you can imagine 25 girls in second year of secondary. It was a nightmare. But then at the end, as there were some classroom management problems, I decided to speak to them. I sat down on the floor with them and I asked them, what do you expect from your English class? What would you like to learn? And what do you think you're going to use English in the future for? So, and the thing, it's very hard to put ourselves on the spot. Sometimes we need to recognize that we change strategies. Have very different things that we say. One day or may not work the other day. Sounds like a lot. Yes, some of them do not feel confident to speak. Wait for this one. It's also my first year as a teacher, and yes, I've tried to change the way we do activities. And it's not only encourage them, it's just finding out the way they want to learn. But it's because it's not like, oh yes, they're all visual learners and there's a magic formula for this, or all students work like this. Going back to the group that was my complete nightmare years ago, I have these were A, B, and C. Second of secondary, A, B, and C. So I had to teach the same class and plan and teach the same class in different ways because the groups were very different and they will respond to different types of encouragement. Okay, I'm going over, we have 15 minutes. Some students take over the conversation, they're eager to participate and leave everyone else out. We all have the typical me student. And yes, we don't want to discourage this student who always wants to help us, but we also want other students to participate. So what can we do for different strategies, like using sticks to get their names out, or using different interaction patterns so we can just monitor what they say. And I'm going to go over interaction patterns in a moment, because this is a very useful way to give everyone an opportunity to participate. Some students are very shy. When I ask questions aloud, they don't want to participate. That's the opposite. So my piece of advice here is, let's imagine that you're in a controlled activity, right? Students are filling in the blanks, or then you have them comparing pairs, and as they work, you notice that the shy student has the correct answer. So you invite this student to participate. And knowing that this student has the same answer and he writes the correct answer on the board, or he answers correctly, and you say, hey, great, it's a correct answer. That student will feel more eager to participate little by little. Does it make sense? It's like trying to make them feel part of the class and checking that they have the correct answer before saying it out loud, so they don't get corrected on the spot. This is something that I have seen lately. And some teachers tell me this. It's a writing lesson. How am I supposed to make it communicative? How am I supposed to make students talk during a writing lesson? Well, this is very simple. When we follow we follow a framework to write. We can have some students brainstorm ideas in small groups. We can have students check each other's work, or we can have students respond to their work. It is pretty simple. These are just little things we need to add or modify from our lessons, so students don't feel like a writing class is just a writing class and all they have to do is write, because then they're going to see you and they're going to say, no English lesson, no, not today. And an old favorite, I have no time. It's impossible to get to that communicative moment in the class. Does it make sense? We only have 12 minutes to finish, but I hear this all the time, and I used to say this all the time. Let me tell you a secret. If you're told that your class is 50 minutes long, you should plan your lesson for a 30-minute class. Because what we don't take into account is, when we plan, is, okay, yes, my class is 50 minutes and I plan activities. I plan 10 activities for those 50 minutes. But what happens is that it takes us, let's say, 5 minutes to get to do the morning routine or whatever, or to have our students take out their materials, to take attendance, to write on the board, blah, blah, blah. And then we have all these sort of interruptions. Does it make sense? We have the coordinator coming in saying, we need someone, blah, 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 because you forgot to do this. Or I used to work in a Catholic school, so my class was always interrupted by communion time. So I learned that instead of planning my lessons for 45 minutes, I took into consideration those 15 minutes that will take my, the communion part off. And then I will have, like, if we talk about real time, I will have only 20 minutes to teach. So I had to do the most in those 20 minutes. So I would have a very, very short warmer, then presentation, or then pre, while, and post lesson, so I could get to that communicative part. Okay, then, well, what are the benefits? This is a question for you to think of. Some of the benefits of having students work in pairs, and why is it difficult sometimes? Well, we need to move forward. Using different interaction patterns, well, it helps us create a better atmosphere. It helps us maximize the learning experience, to reduce teacher talking time. I mean, this is a webinar, so it's pretty much me talking my ideas. Okay, what I can do is I can write a summary. I can type a summary of the ideas I can share with you if you send an email to Abdel. We're going to talk about this in a moment, so I can just finish the presentation. Is that okay? We need to increase. Right now it's a webinar, so it's pretty much impossible that teacher talking time is reduced at the minimum. And in real classrooms, well, what we do is we need to increase student talking time, because they are the ones practicing the language, not you. And we have to give students equal chance of participation, and we need to promote more varied language used in the classroom, because some students will be like very, very beginners. Some other students, well, we're talking about mixed ability classrooms and mixed level classrooms, and this is what we're dealing with every day, because not all students understand my instructions, and some students get bored, and some other students are frustrated because they cannot even understand the verb to be. So what we can do is use different strategies, such as differentiated learning. We can have some tasks which are easier. It's the same task, but it's done easier for the learners, and a little bit more difficult for students who are more advanced. And well, of course, we can give students the chance of performing different roles throughout the class. Some other ways we can overcome challenges in communicative tasks is to set expectations, clear expectations. I mean, give them a model of what we expect them to do or what we want to see at the end. Check comprehension of instructions. Okay, what are you going to do? Use your ICQs, like, okay, are we going to write or are we going to speak? Are we going to work in pairs or in groups? Give all the support students need. If we need to say instructions, we need to write them down on the board, we need to give them examples, we're going to do that because it's going to save us so much time when we're monitoring. Monitor, as I said, and support individual learners, and always give positive, timely, and useful feedback every time. Now, I wanted to think about these questions before I finish my presentation. If you have learned anything new today, is it useful? And now, are there any questions? We have 6 minutes. Abdel just posted the link so you can evaluate my presentation, but now we have 6 minutes left. If you want to make any questions, you may ask them right now because we have 6 minutes. Because this will be pretty much it. More info. These books are very interesting. How to teach grammar. I'm going to post them here if you want to learn more about history and more about different approaches to them. Okay. What is the best tool? Oh, perfect. Good afternoon. What is the best tool to teach preschoolers using interaction? Okay, you can assign there is no best tool, but what I will recommend is you can give them colors or stickers, or you can give them different animals every 2 weeks. I've seen and I've done this before, like this week, you, and you, I mean, let's talk about teams of 3 are caterpillars, and your butterflies and your bears. And every time we're working in teams, they get together depending on the animal they are that week. Yes, when I have the chance to be a mini teacher, yes, they love being the mini teacher because they have a different role in the classroom. Oh, thank you, Ali. I hope you enjoyed my presentation as well. And thank you very much. It was very helpful. Yes, I know that you've gone through different presentations through different difficulties, and I wanted to share this with you because sometimes we see consultants as, okay, they're not teachers or they are not in the classroom anymore. But yes, we're in the classrooms. We're observing. Some of us still teach in classrooms, and we deal with these problems. And Angie Wapas, could you give us some examples of using the different interaction patterns? Of course. Okay, well, we have 4 minutes. 4 minutes left. Some examples of using different interaction patterns. Okay, it depends on the purpose, of course, depends on the group, and depends on the time you've got. For example, if we're doing controlled practice, they can do this individually because all of the students have their own pace when they're learning or when they are answering something. But when some students say, "Teacher, I finished," okay, and then you have another student saying, "Teacher, I finished." Okay, you too, check your answers or compare your answers, and then you're not telling students, okay, wait until everyone's finished so we can check the answers. So they can help each other and discuss if they agree or not with their answers, and they can also be more autonomous as learners. Another example is when we're going to write about a topic. Okay, let's brainstorm some ideas about pollution, or let's talk about living in a big city advantages and disadvantages, and living in a small city, advantages and disadvantages. So you can have them work in groups, and they can brainstorm and write all their ideas they can later use on their piece of writing, which will be individual. Do you think it's practical to divide the students by levels in the classroom? Yes and no. Some students are very well, depends on the school, depends on the number of students, but some schools divide their students by levels. Some others in the classroom, they don't make it that explicit, but there are two ways to work with this. You can have stronger learners help weaker learners, or you can have groups of weaker learners so they can have easier tasks, and then you have the stronger learners who could have more difficult tasks. But you have to be very conscious about what you're doing, how, and why. Thanks for the idea. Does it make sense, Anonimo? It's practical, as I said, depending on our goal and depending on our students. Well, if you don't have any questions, I really appreciate your time. I was a bit nervous because this whole internet working is kind of new to me, but I hope you had a good time, and I hope you learned new things that you could get in your classroom with the best of your attitude, because teachers, we have a very, very important role in today's society. Believe it or not, we do. And you're very important. And this is what we're doing this for. Well, thank you very much. I have 1 minute left. Abdel, if you want to say something.
Yeah. Yes, Anna, thank you. Actually, I just want to say thank you. And just to close this excellent webinar, thank you everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and being here, and you are eager to learn. Just a couple of announcements. There is a link on the chat in which you can evaluate our services or webinar. This is very important to us because we can improve every day. So please help us, and the details are on the same link. This is the Communicative Language Teaching webinar, and our presenter, Ana Caballero Madrigal, is the one you had to actually write on the form. And please, an invitation for tomorrow the same time. Check our social nets update on NSM. We have social emotional learning in the language classroom. Also, is very interesting. Please share this information with more colleagues. We want more people in here, more teachers learning, and to have a community of learners and improving teaching. Thank you, and again, thank you everyone for being here. And on behalf of Grupo SM and University of Dayton Publishing, we really appreciate your time and being here. And hopefully we will be here together tomorrow at the same time. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice afternoon. Take care and please be safe. Bye-bye, Anna. Thank you.